What happens when you throw your average Joe into the realm of film? Grant him a V-Watch that allows him to transform into a kick-ass superhero, and let him pilot his very own giant transforming mecha? Well, the result is simply beautiful, that's for sure.
Head to the go-go, baby! You want some? Well, come and get it.
Viewtiful Joe is created by prolific game designer and director Hideki Kamiya as part of the Capcom 5, an initiative to provide the Nintendo GameCube with some much needed third-party support. Other titles to spawn from it include the Bayonetta predecessor, PN03, the ultimately cancelled Dead Phoenix, Suda51's cult classic, Killer 7, and the legendary Resident Evil 4. What came about was a side-scrolling beat-em-up with a fun, unique art style, interesting game design, a quirky sense of humor, and notorious difficulty. Oh, and the PS2 version also featured Dante from the Devil May Cry series. In-game, Viewtiful Joe's V-Watch allows him to manipulate reality, as long as he's on film, and it does this by mimicking special effects that one would typically see in the action movies, such as slow motion, fast forwarding, and dramatic close-ups. This forms the basis for the gameplay mechanics and puzzle solving featured in the series, as well as the supers and the versus games. But enough with the substance, cause Joe is all about style. The world of Viewtiful Joe is enveloped in the timeless cel-shaded art style, with cool character designs inspired by both American comic book superheroes, as well as those featured in Japanese tokusatsu. So it's all the more fitting that he's crossed over with some of the most iconic heroes from each side. It doesn't take much to see that he clearly leans towards the latter though, as he sports a pink scarf that's very reminiscent of Kamen Rider, a V emblem on his head that resembles Zubat's helmet, a transformation bracelet and sequence typical of Henshin heroes. I mean, the outfit itself just screams Super Sentai. You get my point. But underneath that getup lies regular Joe, a good-hearted nerdy cinephile with an affinity for cheeseburgers and an extremely dorky laugh. He does look like an avid nu metal listener, but he was designed during the early 2000s, so for the sake of it, let's just say it's pretty relatable. Alongside him is his cheeky girlfriend Sylvia, a valley girl type who doesn't quite understand Joe's interests, but nonetheless supports him all the way. In the first game, she was kidnapped and dragged into Movie Land during a theater date with Joe, who subsequently gets dragged in as well. This leads to Joe having to rescue Sylvia from an evil syndicate known as Jado, which he accomplishes by donning his sweet new V-Watch entrusted to him by his idol, the mighty Captain Blue. Sylvia stars alongside Joe in the sequel as a gun-toting pom-pom wielding superhero, Sexy Sylvia, where they embark on the quest to obtain the Rainbow Oscars before they fall into the hands of the devious Black Emperor. Viewtiful Joe was a moderate success, and you can tell Capcom was really trying to make it a franchise during its brief life, as in just a span of 3 years, Joe would not only receive 2 mainline games, but also 2 spin-offs, namely Double Trouble for the Nintendo DS and Red Hot Rumble for the GameCube and PSP. The second one was not very great. Both games were even adapted into an anime by the studio who made the Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter Alpha movies. It aired on Kids WB here in the US, but the second season will only be dubbed in Spanish, therefore only shown on Cartoon Network in Latin America. It has wonderful opening and ending themes performed by the short-lived band Saga, which I personally love. Joe's English voice in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is provided by Daryl Gilbo. He succeeds Jason Palmer, who voiced Joe in the English dub of the anime, as well as D. Bradley Baker, the original voice of Joe, who voiced him in the all 4 Viewtiful Joe games. Joe is voiced in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom by Shinji Kawada, who is known for voicing Shinto from Naruto, and Spider-Man in a handful of dubs from Marvel TV shows. Joe's Japanese voice in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is provided by Tomokazu Seki, who also voiced him in the anime. Other notable roles from Mr. Seki include Yoshimitsu in Tekken, Gilgamesh and Fate in all its related media, Kanji in Persona 4 and its spin-offs, Rob Lucy in One Piece, and Sanemi Shinazugawa in Demon Slayer. If you're familiar with Capcom's history, then you know that I've yet to mention the unfortunate demise of Clover Studio, Viewtiful Joe's primary developer. Well, it happened. After the lukewarm sales of its original IPs, Viewtiful Joe, Okami, and Godhead. Its key staff would then go on to form Platinum Games, which is its own chapter in video game history. Viewtiful Joe 2 left audiences on the cliffhanger 2 decades ago, as it was stated that the world would be in grave danger a total of 3 times, and a hero would be needed to save it. Will we finally get to see the finale now that Kamiya is directing Okami 2? With development led by his newly established studio, Clovers? One can only hope, I suppose.
Viewtiful Joe was added to Tatsunoko vs. Capcom Cross Generation of Heroes as a console-only character exclusive to the Wii port of the game, being the final roster reveal alongside Apatsu Man. Technically, the Wii exclusive characters are actually in the arcade version, just inaccessible without a passcode that has to be entered on the arcade version configuration screen. But that literally wasn't discovered until a few months ago in 2024, so yeah. Joe's theme in Cross Generation of Heroes is interesting. It's Joe the Hero, the Stage 1 song of the first Viewtiful Joe game, and the song that also gets remixed as the Stage 1 themes for both Viewtiful Joe 2 and Double Trouble. What's interesting about it though is that the theme itself isn't remixed. It's ripped directly from the first Viewtiful Joe game as is. I don't know if it was a budget or a time thing, but I'm not too bothered since it's a good theme. Viewtiful Joe is the smallest character in the game alongside Roll, and his job is to make your life a living hell with his boomerang so that he can close in when your opponent least expects it. Boomerang is a really good chargeable projectile with multiple possible trajectories. Even on top of the game's universal movement options, Viewtiful Joe has some great mobility, due in part to Red Hot Kick. The heavy version particularly travels pretty far and can be made safe in a variety of situations, and thanks to his size, some attacks and combos either don't work on him or are harder to do on him. Like with Ro though, short character means short limbs, which means incredibly stubby normals. His bombs, while potentially tools to start combos, can also hurt Joe if he's in range, making them a gamble. And both of his level 1s, especially Desperado, aren't particularly great, leaving his level 3 as the only practical one. Pretty much all of Joe's attacks in this game are taken directly from his home series, from obvious things like his special moves and hyper combos to even some of his normals. For example, here's Joe's jumping heavy in Tatsunoko. It's based off of the Red Hot Roundhouse in Viewtiful Joe, done by zooming in and kicking. Joe also has a slide command normal as well. This is also a maneuver he can do in his home series. There's also Joe's ground throw as well. This is his Yamarashi technique from Viewtiful Joe 2. A special throw he can use by holding the kick button there. Even his launcher in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom is his crouching punch attack from his games, which also launched enemies into the air. As a kid that played the Viewtiful Joe games religiously in the mid-2000s, I used to do the punch launcher, then jump up and start comboing them in the air and pretend I was doing an aerial rave in a hypothetical Marvel vs. Capcom game. Yeah, I was kind of a dork, but hey, at least I don't have to pretend anymore. Joe also has a unique command normal, Excellent Knuckle Punch, done with forward and medium attack. This is deceptively an overhead, which you probably wouldn't recognize on reaction at first because of how short Joe is. However, it can't be comboed out of without Baroque, limiting its application a bit. Joe's first special move is Boomerang, done with a quarter circle forward in any attack. Joe throws one of his trademark boomerangs, its trajectory dependent on which attack strength was used. Light travels across the screen horizontally. Medium curves upwards or downwards when grounded and in the air respectively. And heavy travels forward a short distance before zooming backwards behind Joe. Boomerangs are of course Joe's main projectile in his home series, and is one of the earliest purchases you can make in the game. Joe can also charge his boomerangs as well, by holding down the attack button you do the motion with, a full charge being denoted by the boomerang itself igniting. This changes the properties of boomerang, also dependent on the strength of the attack button used. Here's the charged light version, the charged medium version, and the charged heavy version. Joe also has the ability to charge his boomerang in Viewtiful Joe as well, which also makes it travel across the screen in unique ways. Shocking Pink is done with a quarter circle back and attack. Joe whips out a pink bomb with a V emblem on it and kicks it towards his opponent, the bomb detonating afterwards. How long the bomb takes to detonate is dependent on the attack button used. The stronger the attack, the longer the detonation timer is. This needs to be used with caution though. The resulting explosion can also damage Joe if he's anywhere near the bomb when it goes off. This is Joe's other projectile from his home series, and like Boomerang, can also be acquired early on in the games. If you hold the attack button after doing the motion, Joe can also hold the bomb in place by repeatedly juggling it. He can do this for as long as he likes, since the detonation timer doesn't start until after he kicks the bomb away. This is also something Joe can do with the bombs in his games as well. The original GameCube version of the first game also has a neat little Easter egg associated with it. If you hold the bomb in place for a bit, Joe starts whistling the first few notes of the Super Mario Bros. Theme. Doing the same quarter circle back motion in the air gives Joe an exclusive aerial move, Red Hot Kick. The angle Joe kicks at is dependent on the attack strength used. Light goes straight down. Medium goes downwards at a 45-degree angle. And heavy goes straight across the screen horizontally. The heavy version particularly is a fantastic mobility tool for Joe, and despite already being somewhat safe on block, he can also cancel whiffed heavy red hot kicks into his heavy boomerang, covering him from anyone trying to capitalize on the kick missing. This one of course comes from his home series as well. Red Hot Kick is basically Joe's most iconic attack, so much so that it's the attack he's doing on the cover for both mainline Viewtiful Joe games. The attack itself is based on the even more iconic Rider Kick, the signature move of Kamen Rider, perhaps the biggest media influence on the series itself. Brief tangent here, but relevant because of also being a Kamiya game, Bayonetta's afterburner kick in her series, despite being named after the Sega series of the same name, is all but a renamed Red Hot Kick in both form and function. Air Joe is done in, you guessed it, the air, by mashing the attack buttons. Joe will do a lightning fast flurry of punches and kicks that actually racks up a fair bit of damage. This is another technique that comes straight from Joe's home series as well. Joe, interestingly enough, also has an additional taunt that can be done by pressing forward, light attack, and heavy attack.
Hey, hey! Yes! Hey, hey!
It doesn't really serve a purpose, but if there's any character it makes sense to give an extra taunt, it's Joe. Viewtiful Joe's first hyper combo is Desperado, done with a quarter circle forward and 2 attacks. Joe, accompanied by Sylvia, busts out a giant cannon and fires a large energy projectile from it, doing a ton of damage. Unfortunately, this super has massive startup that makes it pretty much impossible to use practically, outside of weird DHC and Team Hyper combo setups, and even then, your meter is likely better used elsewhere. Six Cannon is a part of Six Machine, an aircraft Joe can pilot in his home series. Six Cannon specifically is an ability that can be unlocked in Viewtiful Joe too. In fact, in the Japanese version of this game in Marvel 3, the move is adequately named Six Cannon. Desperado, however, is the name of the gun Sylvia can use in Viewtiful Joe too. His next hyper combo is Mach Speed, done with a Dragon Punch motion and 2 attacks.
Very good! Let's speed! Very good!
Joe does a series of repeated attacks on the opponent before one last hit, knocking them into the air. This super doesn't do a ton of damage, though the final hit can be super jump cancelled and continued into an air combo. Unfortunately, the angle at which the opponent flies after this final hit makes it kind of tricky to actually chase them down for an air combo, so it's not as practical as it looks at first glance. Mach Speed is one of Joe's trademark abilities in his series. He can go fast enough that he'll catch on fire and start generating after images of himself as well. Joe's level 3 hyper combo is Slow and Zoom, done with a corner circle back and 2 attacks.
Go!
Joe kicks the opponent and then goads them into hitting him. He skillfully dodges before knocking them into the air and doing a dramatic pose, damaging the opponent. This is generally the hyper combo Joe wants to use more often than not. It does a good amount of damage, which Joe desperately needs, and it just looks cool. The initial hit has a very short range though, a consequence of Joe's stubby limbs, so do keep that in mind. This level 3 is a combination of a number of elements in the Viewtiful Joe series. As the name implies, the super utilizes Joe's slow and zoom powers from his home games. Slow puts things in slow motion, while zoom does a dramatic close-up. Both of these abilities boost the damage of Joe's attacks, and using both in conjunction is especially useful for completely melting HP in a few boss fights. Joe dramatically dodges the opponent in slow motion before knocking them upwards. When using the slow ability in his home series, Joe will automatically dodge attacks for as long as he has VFX power, the meter tied to his in-game powers. Joe then jumps up in the air and dramatically poses, the pose you get being chosen randomly from a handful he can do. This is taken from the Viewtiful Forever ability in his home series, a special move that can be done while zoomed in that damages all enemies on screen. One last aesthetic touch. Joe poses and activates a mask and visor on his helmet as the smooth startup animation. This is a reference to his home series, where Joe would do the same thing at the start of major boss fights. This animation and helmet functionality is also a shout out to Kaketsu Zubat, whose helmet also had a similar function. It's also worth noting that this super also works on the Giants, and they have a unique animation to accommodate the move. Joe kicks them in the shins, forcing them into a kneeling position where the move can continue from there. Joe's assist in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom is Shocking Pink. Like the regular version, the explosion can also potentially damage your point character, so be careful. Here are Joe's colors. Color 2 is based on Captain Blue, Joe's idol and the character that kickstarts the plot of the first Viewtiful Joe game. Joe's yellow color is something of a punchline to a joke from a cutscene from the first Viewtiful Joe game. Joe encounters a boss in Chapter 5 that appears to be a doppelganger of his. Joe proposes that they fight, and whoever loses has to wear a yellow costume instead.
Let's settle this. We don't need two heroes wearing red anyway. Whoever wins has to change into a yellow outfit. Okay?
This mention of a yellow costume for a doppelganger has another layer to it though. It's another Kamen Rider shoutout, this time the Shocker Rider number 1, an evil clone of Kamen Rider, primarily distinguished from the real one by his yellow boots, gloves, and scarf. Here's Viewtiful Joe's endings in both Ultimate All-Stars and Cross Generation of Heroes. Joe returned in the next Capcom vs. game, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, joined by fellow Tatsunoko vs. Capcom alumni Zero and later Frank West. He gets some new tricks, and though he lost his level 3, mostly received buffs in the transition to Marvel 3. Joe's theme in this game is a proper remix of the Stage 1 theme from the first Viewtiful Joe game. I'll be honest, I'm not really a fan of the instrumentation of this arrangement, and it sounds weirdly shrill in a way the original doesn't. I do think the intro was pretty great though. Joe sees some notable improvements from Tatsunoko vs. Capcom in terms of both mobility and offense, but does it help in Marvel 3's shark-infested waters? Joe not only retains the air dash he had in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, but also gains a triple jump as well, being one of the few characters in the game with one. Boomerang is even more impressive this time around. Between his spot dodge, his new uppercut move, and his Mach Speed Super, Joe has several invincible reversal options he can utilize with or without meter. Speaking of supers, his Desperado Super is finally viable now. And his Viewtiful God Hand Super is an incredible utility debuff. But he still has stubby limbs, and consequently kinda awful normals. His overall damage output is on the low end of things. And Joe is a pretty terrible supporting character and needs the lead role for himself. He's best played in point position or not at all. Joe retains pretty much all of his command normals from Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. I do want to shout out his jumping heavy again here though. While it's functionally the same as it is in TVC, it has some additional visual flair that's more accurate to how Red Hot Roundhouse looks in the Viewtiful Joe games. Thanks to having pretty similar control schemes, all of Joe's returning moves retain their inputs from Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. We'll still go over them since a lot of them have some extra functionality in Marvel 3 specifically. Excellent Knuckle Punch is largely the same, and incredibly fast and difficult, if not nigh impossible to react to overhead. This time though, Joe can cancel it into a launcher or his new Dragon Punch move that we'll talk about in a bit. Boomerang is pretty much the same as in the previous game, with each button strength using the same trajectory as in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, in addition to being chargeable as well. They're noticeably faster this time around though.
Boomerang! 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 Boomerang!
Air boomerangs specifically are arguably Joe's best approach tool, as the recovery of this move can be cancelled by landing on the ground, allowing him to quickly hop up and fire off another one. Groovy Uppercut is new to Marvel 3, a flashy anti-air done with a Dragon Punch motion in any attack. The light version of this move goes upwards, and the medium and heavy versions go upwards at a 45-degree angle. The heavy version in particular hits twice, Joe doing an additional punch on hit. The medium version is the most notable though, being cancelable into his jumping medium attack, making it a reliable combo starter. This move is largely based on the upward spinning attack Joe can perform in his home series while zoomed in. Even there, he can angle it either straight up or diagonally upwards. Shocking Pink also retains its TVC input and works the same way, down to being able to delay kicking the bomb away. Red Hot Kick also retains its TVC input, and the light and medium versions are essentially the same as before.
Red Hot Kick! Red Hot Kick!
Joe can also air dash after performing one, allowing him to extend air combos by a pretty fair degree. However, Joe loses the horizontally traveling heavy variants from Tatsunoko in favor of a new multi-hitting spinning flame dive kick. This still covers a good amount of horizontal distance, and when done from high up on screen is actually a great way to cross the screen and run away from pressure. This variant is the Fire Drill Kick, and comes from the Viewtiful Joe games. Red Hot Kick transforms into this when you zoom in during the attack. Air Joe is pretty much the same as in TVC as well.
Air combo!
In Ultimate Marvel 3 specifically, Joe gets an additional move, V-Dodge. This is a spot dodge done with the attack and special buttons with a good bit of invincibility for its duration. Think the sidestep from earlier King of Fighters games. This dodge is special cancelable, and canceling it into a move with an abundance of startup invincibility like Groovy Uppercut or Mach Speed is a good way to turn the tables on your opponent. The move name is taken from the aforementioned auto dodge Joe gets when slowing down time in his home series. Functionally though, the move has more in common with the high dodge Joe can perform on the ground in his home games to dodge low attacks, putting enemies off balance and opening them up for attack. Viewtiful Joe's first hyper combo in Marvel 3 is Desperado, done with the same input as in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom.
Maximum! Come on, Six Machine! Six Cannon! Maximum!
The starter for this super has been massively decreased, making it a viable combo ender on both the ground and in the air. Joe's second hyper combo is Mach Speed, done with the same Dragon Punch into attack motion as in TVC.
Mach Speed! Viewtiful! Air combo! Come on, Six Machine! Six Cannon! Awesome!
While the damage for this one still isn't anything to write home about, its main utility is the absurd amount of invincibility this move has on startup. It's one of Joe's best reversal options as a result. Joe trades in his level 3 from TVC for a new utility level 1 super, Viewtiful God Hand, done with a quarter circle back and 2 attacks.
Air combo! Great! Air combo!
Joe inflicts a status debuff on the opponent, slowing the character down. In addition to the lack of speed when hit, they're in hit stun for an extended period of time, allowing for combos to be done that wouldn't work otherwise. One such example can be seen in one of my personal favorite Marvel 3 clips of all time.
Yes, that is a send. Anyway, back to the fight. Back to the fight. Oh, low tier.
Wolverine's low tier used to be.
Wolverine got low tiered.
Used to be the best in the game.
Nah, anyone who gets
hit.
hit.
Press buttons, man.
Anyone who gets hit. Oh my God! Oh! Oh my God! What the hell is that? How can man go attack 4 times? This game is sick.
The opponent even gets the slow status icon ripped directly from the Viewtiful Joe games over their heads until it wears off. The move name itself is also an obvious nod to Clover Studios' final game, the awesome brawler God Hand. Joe's first assist is Boomerang.
Crossover first attack!
His second assist is Groovy Uppercut.
Crossover assist! It's all you!
His third assist is Shocking Pink.
First attack! Crossover assist! It's all you! Not yet! Crossover assist! It's all you!
Shocking Pink's assist can still damage your point character as in TVC, but this can lead to a glitch with some pretty interesting applications. When the bomb detonates, your point character can actually block it. Doing this, however, actually instantly resets assist cooldown, allowing you to immediately call the assist again. Because the point character recovers from block stun quicker than the character in hit stun from the bomb, you can use these for somewhat impractical but still funny loops. Here are Joe's colors. Color 2 is once again based off of Captain Blue, but specifically his sidekick Captain Blue Jr. Colors 3 and 4 are based on the 2 forms of Jet Black. If you want to know more about him, go to your nearest discount store and get a copy of Viewtiful Joe too. Go! Now! Color 5 is based off of Alistair, Joe's rival in the series. I explained this in Dante's video, but he's named after and implied to be the spirit of Dante's sword Alistair from Devil May Cry 1. Color 6 is based off of Sylvia. As mentioned before, Sylvia was the damsel in the first game, being a secret unlockable character there before sharing the spotlight with Joe as the deuteragonist of the second game. Her kidnapping in the first game isn't entirely random though. She factors into the plans of the main antagonist in a big way, the twist involved being something foreshadowed many times throughout the first game, in a clever, if sometimes unsubtle fashion.
He bravely hurls himself into the mystery of the creator's DNA.
Joe's alternate costume is his standard average Joe attire. This is something of a game mechanic in his series. If he overuses his VFX powers and the meter runs out, he reverts back to normal for a short period of time. This becomes a conundrum in the DS game Double Trouble, which takes place outside of Movie Land, cutting off access to his powers. A special VFX camera has to be kept on him at all times to facilitate his powers in the real world. That does beg the question of how Joe was able to use these powers in his fighting game appearances, but let's just imagine the cameraman capturing these fights has a VFX camera and leave it at that.
It's stylish versus beautiful. Okay then. It's alright, Joe. Cool.
Get ready to brawl.
That means I'm both beautiful and stylish. Whoa! You're a real hero? For real?
Battle mode initiated. Live and let die.
Well now, guess we know who's the real hero. Whoa! Nova! Can I have your autograph?
Really? I mean, really?
Live and let die.
Hey, think you could put in a good word for me with the Nova Corps? You will stop your evil ways! Did I say that right?
You should fear me. Go for broke.
Good always triumphs, as they say.
Here's Joe's endings in both Vanilla and Ultimate Marvel 3. In that stretch of time between CVS 2 and Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, Viewtiful Joe was the character I daydreamed about the most getting into a potential versus game. He seemed like the perfect fit. He has powers that would work well in the fighting game, is all about style, and he's a send-up of a bunch of parts of both Eastern and Western superheroes. It'd be incredible. So I was really happy when they announced him as one of the final Tatsunoko vs. Capcom characters prior to Ultimate All-Stars. So much so that young teenage 7th Force saved up a bunch of money just to import the game on release. And as expected, he fits in exceptionally well, and I'm glad he got to appear in both the Tatsunoko and Marvel crossover. If there was any Capcom character that deserved it the most, it was Joe. Joe also made a few cameo appearances elsewhere, such as the short-lived mobile puzzle fighter game, as well as being a bonus costume for Rashid in Street Fighter V and a costume for Frank in Dead Rising 4. Will we ever see a Viewtiful Joe 3? Well, we're living in a timeline where Okami is directing an Okami sequel, and he's explicitly said multiple times that if he ever got to work with Capcom again, Viewtiful Joe 3 is up there with Okami 2 at the top of his list. So here's hoping, I suppose. That's going to do it for this episode. As always, thanks for watching, and a special thanks to the patrons that support the channel, and an even bigger thanks to JuiceboxJoints for handling the introduction portion of this episode. If you want fun, laid back, and well-researched fighting game retrospectives, I can't recommend this channel enough. He makes, in my opinion, some of the best fighting game content on YouTube. I highly implore you to check his channel out. It'll be linked in the description. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.